On the early morning of August 30th, 2021, in Taipei, Taiwan, 3 policemen were patrolling Hajiang Road when a woman suddenly approached them, her face pale and her eyes wide with panic. This woman was Li Lihua, and with a trembling voice, she urgently informed the officers that her in-laws had likely been murdered. What drove Li Lihua to such desperate measures as stopping a police car? To understand the harrowing events that unfolded, we must turn back the clock 12 hours to 1:30 p.m. on August 29th, the day before the tragic incident. On that fateful afternoon, Li Lihua and her husband, Zhuang Wenhui, called his parents to announce their visit. When Wenhui's father picked up the phone, his joy was palpable. He was thrilled to hear that his son and daughter-in-law were coming over. However, 3 hours later, at 4:30 p.m., when Wenhui and Li Lihua arrived at the family home, they were met with an unsettling sight. The iron gate was locked from the inside. Despite their persistent ringing of the doorbell, no one answered. A sense of unease washed over Wenhui. Just hours earlier, his father had answered the phone with excitement, so why was the house now shrouded in silence? At that moment, his gaze fell upon a note affixed to the door, reading that the parents were emigrating to Argentina the following day. The note explained that they had needed to travel south that day to bid farewell to relatives and friends, and it concluded with an apology, signed by Yunhui. To grasp the significance of this note, we must delve deeper into the family dynamics and the case itself. The father mentioned in the note, Jiang Shudu, aged 68, lived with his wife, Mrs. Kai. Together, they had 3 children, their eldest son, who had already settled in Argentina, their daughter, Jiang Yueqing, who was married to Chen Yonghui, the author of the note, and their youngest son, Zhuang Wenhui, who stood by Li Lihua's side. The Zhuang family was well established, born from humble beginnings as a small barber shop in Taipei. Over the years, Mr. and Mrs. Zhuang took bold steps, investing their hard-earned savings into real estate around Hajiang Street. Their fortunes flourished as Taipei underwent urban expansion, dramatically increasing the value of their investments. Seizing this opportunity, the couple amassed considerable wealth. Of their 3 children, the eldest had opted for a life in Argentina early on. Following his example, their daughter and her husband, Chen Yonghui, also built their lives in that distant land, leaving only the youngest son, Zhuang Wenhui, and his wife, Li Lihua, to remain in Taiwan to care for his aging parents. By August 2021, Mr. and Mrs. Zhuang had decided to emigrate to Argentina themselves, eager to reunite with their children and embrace a well-earned retirement. Their son-in-law, Chen Yonghui, made a special trip back from Argentina to assist them with immigration procedures and accompany them on their journey. Upon learning that their parents would soon leave Taiwan, Zhuang Wenhui and Li Lihua felt a strong desire to visit and help with the packing. Arriving at 131 Hajiang Street around 4 p.m. on August 29th, they were taken aback to find the main door locked tight. Little did they know, this seemingly innocuous visit would lead to a nightmarish revelation, forever altering the course of their lives and shattering the peace of the Zhuang family. As darkness fell, the mystery surrounding the locked door deepened, hinting at a sinister fate that awaited them within those walls. As the elderly couple prepared to reunite with their children and embrace retirement, their son-in-law, Chen Yonghui, made a special trip from Argentina. His purpose was clear: to assist them with immigration procedures and accompany them on their journey. When Li Lihua and her husband, Zhuang Wenhui, learned their parents were about to leave Taiwan for Argentina, they decided to visit and help with packing. On the afternoon of August 29th, around 4 p.m., they arrived at 131 Hajiang Street, only to be met with a locked main door. A note affixed to the door caught their attention. Though the handwriting was unmistakably Chen Yonghui's, it contained an unsettling message. It claimed that the parents had gone to South Taiwan to bid farewell to friends. This revelation sent a wave of suspicion coursing through Wenhui. How could his parents have left so suddenly? Just 3 hours earlier, his father had been cheerfully chatting on the phone. No mention had been made of any trip south, and they had eagerly awaited the couple's arrival for afternoon tea. His mother had even urged Lihua to take the longer route through Shilin to purchase her favorite pork knuckles and steamed buns. Why, then, would she suddenly alter her plans? After waiting outside for what seemed like an eternity, the couple decided to seek refuge in a nearby restaurant. During this time, Wenhui's mind raced with worry. He repeatedly called home, hoping against hope that his parents had returned. Finally, at 10:30 p.m., someone picked up the phone. But instead of the familiar voices of his parents, he was greeted by his brother-in-law, Chen Yonghui, who hastily informed him that their parents had not yet returned, before abruptly hanging up. The oddity of his brother-in-law's behavior only deepened their unease. The couple exchanged worried glances and decided to return to the house to investigate further. Upon their arrival, Wenhui rang the doorbell again. After a brief pause, his brother-in-law appeared, dressed inappropriately in a white tank top and shorts, irritation etched across his face. With visible annoyance, Chen Yonghui snapped, "Why are you coming at this hour? I already told you the parents aren't home." The couple quickly explained their intentions, insisting they were merely there to help. As they made their way upstairs, Chen Yonghui did not object to their entry. In the living room, he slumped into a sofa, propping his feet up on a nearby chair. Wenhui immediately sensed that something was amiss. His brother-in-law's complexion was pale, his eyes bloodshot, and he looked utterly exhausted. More disturbingly, a pungent smell of blood lingered in the room, and there were suspicious sticky stains on the furniture. The stains appeared to be dried blood. Unable to contain his anxiety, Wenhui pointed towards the ceiling and asked, "What's that up there?" Without a second glance, Chen Yonghui coldly replied, "Just mosquito stains." When Wenhui pressed further about his parents' whereabouts, questioning whether they truly went south that afternoon and why they had not communicated their plans, Chen Yonghui responded with indifference. "It was a last-minute decision," he said. "They specifically told me you would visit this afternoon, which is why I left the note." Suddenly, as if the weight of the conversation became too heavy to bear, he shifted gears, launching into complaints about his in-laws. Amidst the turmoil of family dynamics, tensions simmered. The parents, it seemed, were unwavering in their favoritism towards the eldest son. As the youngest son, Zhuang Wenhui, observed the inequity, a bitter thought crossed his mind. Why were he and his siblings denied a fair share of the family assets, especially when the eldest son had already amassed a fortune? Startled by the implications of their discussion, Zhuang Wenhui quickly aligned himself with his brother-in-law's sentiments, revealing his own frustrations. "I have issues with this too," he confessed, a sense of solidarity forming as both men grappled with their family's stark favoritism. In a moment of frustration, Zhuang Wenhui lamented the departure of his in-laws to Argentina, questioning why they left him with nothing. The old house felt like a burden, especially with his struggling business. He had considered asking them for a loan, but couldn't bring himself to do it. As he spoke, an unsettling thought crossed his mind. Were they escaping to Argentina just to avoid him? With excitement lighting up his face, he shared his feelings with his brother-in-law. "I'm practically their son too," he asserted, his voice revealing a mix of desperation and indignation. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that his in-laws treated him like a thief, whereas they preferred to flee rather than live with their actual son. The tension in the living room pulsed as the two men animatedly discussed their grievances. But deep down, Zhuang Wenhui knew the truth. His parents were not the callous people he portrayed them to be. He feigned agreement, carefully maneuvering his words to keep his brother-in-law from growing suspicious. Yet, since entering the house, unease gnawed at him. The abrupt departure of his parents, the locked door, the bloodstains on the furniture, and the acrid metallic scent in the air all screamed that something sinister had occurred. His instincts told him that danger lingered just beneath the surface. As fear churned within him, Zhuang Wenhui managed to maintain a facade of calm, engaging in light conversation with his brother-in-law, concealing the dread that gripped his heart. Meanwhile, Li Hua, Zhuang Wenhui's wife, excused herself to use the bathroom. What she encountered there sent chills down her spine. Despite someone's attempts to clean, bloodstains remained embedded in the tile grout, stark evidence of violence. Her in-law's bedroom door stood firmly locked, and the sickening smell of blood intensified near it. In that moment, reality crashed down on Li Hua. She was convinced a murder had taken place, and her in-laws had faced a tragic fate. Heartbroken and terrified, Li Hua fought back tears, knowing that confronting her brother-in-law could put both her and her husband in grave danger. She composed herself and returned to the living room, her mind racing with fear and determination. For the next hour, she discreetly traced letters on her husband's thigh, conveying her silent message. Zhuang Wenhui, understanding the urgency, recognized that something horrific had indeed transpired within those walls. Unbeknownst to them, their brother-in-law, Chen Yonghui, was keenly aware of the tension. He suggested with feigned casualness, "It's so hot today. Why don't you two take a shower?" His intentions were clear, attempting to isolate the couple and make them vulnerable. Both Li Hua and Zhuang Wenhui declined politely, determined to stay together in the living room. They understood that safety lay in their unity, and they resisted the brother-in-law's subtle manipulations. As the hours passed into the early morning, the three remained entwined in their tense conversation. Chen Yonghui, chain-smoking, had consumed nearly half a pack of cigarettes by 4 o'clock a.m. Suddenly, Li Hua rose, feigning normalcy, and declared, as the clock ticked past 4 a.m., the atmosphere was charged. The three men had been locked in this discussion, with Wenhui smoking nearly half a pack of cigarettes, each puff a release of pent-up frustration. Suddenly, Li Hua stood up, her demeanor shifting from tense to casual. Pretending everything was normal, she suggested that the men should be mindful of their smoking. With a slight smile, she offered to clean up the mess, her movements deliberate as she began to tidy the room. The contrast between her calmness and the underlying tension hinted at the storm brewing beneath the surface. In a calculated move, Li Hua grabbed a carefully tied garbage bag and made her way toward the stairs, claiming she was going to throw out the trash. This moment was not random. She knew that garbage collectors would arrive around 4 o'clock a.m., and she had plans to ask them or any passers-by for help in calling the police. As she reached the street corner, fate intervened. A garbage truck appeared, lumbering down the road, but what Li Hua hadn't anticipated was the police patrol car trailing closely behind it. In a moment of urgency, Li Hua dropped the garbage bag and sprinted to flag down the police car. As the officers emerged, she recounted the shocking discoveries she had made. Without hesitation, the three officers followed her to 131 Hejiang Street. They ascended the stairs to the second floor, where they found Zhang Shudu seated calmly on the sofa, displaying no signs of panic. Yet the officers' instincts kicked in as they detected an unusual metallic smell permeating the house. Two of the officers began to sweep the upper and lower floors, searching for anything out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, Zhuang Wenhui and Li Hua approached the door of the master bedroom. Wenhui kicked the door repeatedly, but it stood stubbornly closed. With no other option, he assisted his wife in climbing through a small window to enter the room. Moments later, Li Hua managed to open the door from within. As they stepped into the master bedroom, they were met with a horrifying sight. 6 pieces of luggage lay scattered about. With his heart racing, Wenhui began to unzip one of the bags, revealing blood-soaked body parts. The emotions he had been holding back erupted in a scream of terror. "Murder!" This anguished cry reverberated through the house, drawing the attention of the 3 officers, who rushed in, warning Wenhui not to disturb the crime scene. But a new crisis emerged. With all 3 officers now in the bedroom, the question loomed, who was watching the brother-in-law in the living room? The realization struck, and 2 officers hurried back, only to find the sofa empty. The suspect had escaped right under their noses. The police headquarters received the urgent report, and a significant number of officers were dispatched to secure the crime scene. Investigators, prosecutors, and forensic experts arrived in swift succession. As the bags were opened one by one, the chilling reality of the crime was unveiled. The killer had meticulously sorted the victim's body parts. 2 heads in one bag, 4 hands in another, and feet and internal organs divided among different bags. In addition to the 6 pieces of luggage, a disturbing array of weapons was discovered in the master bedroom, including a half-moon-shaped cleaver, fruit knives, scissors, serrated knives, and other sinister tools. The initial investigation results came swiftly. Zhang Shudu had been struck in the head with a blunt object before suffering a fatal stab wound to the chest. Mrs. Zhuang's death was attributed to a stab wound to the heart, leaving the police puzzled at the gruesome scene before them. The crime scene revealed a chilling absence of any signs of a violent struggle. Neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual, heightening the sense of unease. Forensic experts were astonished to discover that all body parts had been meticulously severed at the joints. The choice of weapon and the method of dismemberment indicated the work of someone with butcher-like skills. The bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Zhang had been dismembered into a horrifying total of 32 pieces. As forensic specialists attempted to reconstruct the remains, a shocking revelation emerged. Mrs. Zhang's body was missing both her heart and liver. Despite an exhaustive search of the premises, police could not locate the missing organs. However, more pressing than the hunt for these body parts was the urgent need to identify the suspect. The evidence pointed resolutely towards the son-in-law, Chen Yonghui. Using the testimony of the youngest son, Zhuang Wenhui, authorities pieced together the timeline. It appeared that Chen Yonghui had likely murdered both in-laws before 4 p.m. on the 29th. He left a misleading note on the front door, creating the illusion of his absence. In reality, he remained inside the house, dismembering the bodies and meticulously cleaning the grisly scene. By 10 that evening, he was able to greet his brother-in-law and wife in the living room with unsettling calmness. Had the couple not been so vigilant, they too might have met a grim fate. In the aftermath of the heinous act, all evidence pointed towards Yun Hui. The police, piecing together the fragments of that fateful night, utilized Zhuang Wenhui's testimony to reconstruct the timeline. It became chillingly clear. Yun Hui had likely murdered both of his in-laws before 4 in the morning. He left behind a misleading note on the door, a mere facade to mask the horror that unfolded within the home. In reality, he was inside, dismembering the bodies and meticulously cleaning the scene. By 10 p.m. that same evening, he greeted his brother-in-law and wife in the living room, maintaining an unsettling calmness that belied the brutal truth. Had the couple been less vigilant, they too might have fallen victim to his ruthless actions. The question loomed large. Why would a son-in-law commit such a horrific crime against his own family? Initially, many speculated that greed was the motive behind Yun Hui's actions. However, as investigators combed through the scene, they stumbled upon a shocking revelation. They discovered $200,000 in cash, along with Yun Hui's identification and passport, all untouched. If money was indeed the motive, the question remained, why had he left these valuables behind? The enigma surrounding Yun Hui's actions began to unravel when he realized he had been discovered. In a panic, he fled the scene, leaving behind not only his plans, but also a significant sum of money. At just 26 years old, Yun Hui had married the eldest daughter of the Zhuang family, Jiang Yueqing. He was a medical student at the time, and his father-in-law, Jiang Shudu, had shown immense generosity, gifting the young couple a lavish apartment on Zhonghua Road, valued at $2 million. This extravagant gift illustrated the high hopes and satisfaction the Zhuang family had in their new son-in-law. Yet, as time passed, it became evident that Yun Hui was not content with his privileged situation. While still pursuing his medical degree, he suddenly developed an intense interest in the world of business. In a bold move, he dropped out of school, consumed by the ambition to carve out a successful career as an entrepreneur. However, the relentless pursuit of wealth can often lead to despair, and for Yun Hui, this ambition soon turned into a string of failures. Close acquaintances remarked that in all his business ventures, he had never achieved a single success. Despite being part of a relatively affluent family, the financial strain of his repeated failures weighed heavily on him. With the support of his family dwindling, Yun Hui's desperation grew. Turning to his father-in-law, he sought their assistance. Initially, Mr. and Mrs. Jiang Shudu remained generous, trying to salvage their son-in-law's ambitions. But soon, the facade of goodwill began to crack under the weight of Yun Hui's mounting failures. As tensions simmered within the family, cracks began to appear. The youngest son, Zhuang Wenhui, had his own grievances. The family dynamic was strained. The parents appeared biased, favoring the eldest son while neglecting the others. In a moment of frustration, Wenhui expressed his discontent, questioning why they received no share of the family assets, especially when the eldest son was already wealthy. The air was thick with discontent as Wenhui's astonishment turned to agreement with his brother-in-law. He too harbored resentments, feelings of being overlooked while Yun Hui basked in the family's favor. These inner conflicts brewed for hours, culminating in a tense conversation that lasted until the early hours of the morning. In a desperate attempt to support their son-in-law, Mr. and Mrs. Jiang Shudu provided financial help whenever he asked. However, they soon realized that their generosity was akin to pouring money into a bottomless pit. Concerned for their daughter and son-in-law's future, they arranged for them to immigrate to Argentina, where their eldest son had already settled. The hope was that in this new environment, Chen Yonghui would finally take his business endeavors seriously and stop squandering their hard-earned money. Upon his arrival in Argentina, Chen seemed to have turned a new leaf. Thanks to his brother-in-law's connections, he secured a position at a slaughterhouse, a stable job that offered the promise of a fresh start. Yet this hope was short-lived. Shortly after, he resigned, lured by the prospect of investing in an auto body repair shop alongside a fellow immigrant. The results of this venture were catastrophic. Within mere months, all the invested capital had vanished into thin air. It was only later that Zhuang Wenhui, the eldest son, discovered the shocking truth. The money Chen had poured into the repair shop was actually sourced from his parents, who were secretly propping him up once again. Furious at this revelation, Zhuang couldn't hold back his anger, chastising his parents for their continued support of Chen Yonghui. This marked a turning point. From that moment onward, Mr. and Mrs. Jiang Shudu resolved to sever all financial ties with their son-in-law. However, Zhuang Wenhui remained deeply unsettled. He feared that despite their resolve, his parents would succumb to Chen's pleading and pressure. To protect them, he proposed that they move in with him in Argentina, where he could keep a watchful eye and prevent Chen from further squandering their family's assets. The elderly couple agreed to this plan, deciding to reunite with their eldest son in Argentina. Meanwhile, Chen Yonghui made a sudden and unexpected return to Taiwan, eagerly assisting his in-laws with their immigration procedures. Family members speculated that his proactive return was driven by a desire to target his father-in-law's real estate holdings in Taipei. He calculated that since the elderly couple would be permanently relocating abroad, they would inevitably need to sell these properties. Chen aimed to take full advantage of this opportunity. Yet, as events unfolded, it became clear that Chen did not achieve his objectives. On the fateful night of the murder, while sitting with his brother-in-law, he lamented about the perceived favoritism of his in-laws. This background information allowed the police to establish a clear motive for the son-in-law: money. To safeguard any potential assets, authorities promptly froze all accounts under Jiang Shudu's name. The investigation took a critical turn when they learned of Chen's frantic escape from the crime scene, wearing only a tank top and shorts, with no passport or money in hand. Police predicted that he would not last long on the run. Indeed, just 3 days after the murder, with no resources or connections, Chen Yonghui had no choice but to turn himself in. Surprisingly, he did not opt for a police station. On the morning of the third day post-murder, around 8 a.m., Chen called the Ministry of Justice. He identified himself as the perpetrator of the Hejiang Street murder and requested to surrender directly to the minister. 3 days after the shocking murder, with no money and no allies, Chen Yonghui found himself cornered. In a moment of desperation, he made the fateful decision to turn himself in, but his choice of venue was anything but conventional. On the morning of the third day after the heinous act, at around 8 a.m., Chen Yonghui picked up the phone and called the Ministry of Justice. He identified himself as the perpetrator of the Hejiang Street murder, requesting an audience with the minister to surrender directly, a move that would leave investigators questioning his motives. In a stunning revelation, Yunhui claimed that his case was entwined with a clandestine Brazilian organization determined to destabilize Taiwan. He insisted that he had been dispatched by this shadowy group, emphasizing the confidentiality of the matter. With palpable fear, he explained that surrendering at a police station would put his family in grave danger. Yunhui disclosed that he was speaking from a public phone booth adjacent to the Taipei First Girls High School. His words dripped with urgency, as he feared for not only his own safety, but that of his loved ones. It wasn't long before the chief prosecutor of the Taipei District Prosecutor's Office, accompanied by several high-ranking officials, swiftly arrived at the scene. To shield the investigation from prying eyes, they conducted a discreet interrogation of Yunhui, delving into the web of his accusations. During the intense questioning, Yunhui asserted that he had acted under the orders of the organization, naming an accomplice he referred to as Wang. He claimed that it was Wang who had committed the heinous act of murdering his in-laws, while he merely assisted in restraining and gagging the victims, ultimately helping with the dismemberment and disposal of their bodies. Yunhui painted a picture of a calculated plan, revealing that Wang was aware of his in-laws' wealth and his own strained relationship with them. He alleged that this knowledge had fueled their criminal intentions and that, upon execution of the crime, the organization would siphon off a portion of the proceeds for its operational funds. While these assertions may now sound utterly preposterous, in the politically charged atmosphere of that era, the authorities could not dismiss them outright. The gravity of his claims was amplified by Yunhui's mention of prior terrorist attacks, which he alleged had been orchestrated by the same organization, complete with intricate details. He recounted a bombing at a newspaper office near Taipei Station on April 26, 2019, where, although no lives were lost, 12 individuals suffered injuries. Additionally, he referenced an explosion that had occurred just 22 minutes earlier in an elevator on Section 4 of Tianshaoan Road. Both incidents had been classified as terrorist acts at the time, lending a veneer of credibility to Yunhui's claims. He insisted that these events were meticulously planned by the organization, even identifying specific individuals who had allegedly carried out the attacks and providing detailed narratives of each incident. However, as months of rigorous investigation unfolded, prosecutors began to suspect that Yunhui was weaving a deceitful tale. Despite his ability to recount these terrorist acts in detail, they soon realized that all his information was drawn from news headlines rather than any clandestine knowledge. When pressed to reveal information that only genuine organization members would know or to provide insight into plans that had yet to be executed, Yunhui faltered, unable to furnish any substantial answers. It became evident that the supposed accomplice, Wang, was nothing more than a figment of Yunhui's imagination. He could not provide a full name, address, or age for this so-called superior, leading investigators to conclude that Yunhui had skillfully manipulated their sensitivity to conspiracy theories. Yunhui understood that simply invoking a secret organization would compel the government to launch a thorough investigation, potentially ensnaring numerous individuals in a convoluted web of suspicion. This tactic had the potential to prolong the investigation for years, a chilling strategy executed with calculated precision. In a case where truth and deception intertwined, the layers of Yunhui's story began to unravel, leaving investigators grappling with the shadows of conspiracy and the stark reality of crime. As the investigation deepened, prosecutors concluded that Chen Yonghui was the sole perpetrator, driven by a relentless pursuit of money. They formally indicted this callous son-in-law. At the initial trial, when faced with intense questioning, Chen Yonghui admitted to the shocking act of murdering his in-laws for financial gain. Yet, he stubbornly clung to a narrative of an accomplice, an alleged figure named Wang, insisting he had been coerced into the crime by a clandestine organization in desperate need of funds. This outlandish claim was met with skepticism. Both sons of the Zhuang family firmly rejected Yonghui's assertions during the trial. In a desperate bid to validate his story, Yonghui requested fingerprint comparisons, but forensic experts quickly dismantled his defense. They explained that the fabric bags containing the bodies were not suitable for collecting clear fingerprints, and all the murder weapons had been meticulously cleaned. Furthermore, since Yonghui had lived in the house, any fingerprints found could easily be dismissed as his own. Given the limited forensic technology of the era and the small fingerprint database, any potential evidence proved futile. Ultimately, the judge determined that Yonghui's declarations were mere fabrications, crafted to absolve him of responsibility, and deemed them completely unreliable. The sentence was severe: death. However, when the case reached the appeals court, a dramatic twist emerged. The High Court convicted him of continuous murder with accomplices, while still upholding the death sentence. The court reasoned that the heinous act could not have been executed by a single individual, citing three compelling factors. First, both elderly victims were of considerable size, making it nearly impossible for Yonghui to overpower them alone. Second, the murders transpired in broad daylight. If he had acted alone, the victims would undoubtedly have cried out for help, yet neighbors reported hearing nothing. Third, the crime scene had been cleaned with remarkable thoroughness, a feat that seemed unattainable for a solitary perpetrator. The appeals court judge leaned towards the theory of multiple assailants. The prosecution disagreed with this ruling and swiftly filed an appeal, sending the case back to the High Court for retrial. This unforeseen turn inadvertently granted Yonghui additional time. In the early hours of October 21, 1987, Yonghui seized the opportunity presented by his release for medical treatment and orchestrated an escape alongside two other inmates. Taking advantage of a moment of inattention from the prison guards, they pried off their shackles with an iron bar, then scattered in different directions. For Yonghui, this was a fleeting taste of freedom. During the ensuing manhunt, police uncovered that Yonghui had a mistress, Wu, in Taiwan, Authorities believed that after his escape, he would likely seek her assistance. Following this lead, police descended upon Wu's residence, only to find she had vanished. They left officers stationed to monitor the location, waiting to see if Yang Hui would return, hoping to reunite with his mistress. Their patience would soon bear fruit. Unbeknownst to him, Li Lihua arrived at the scene only to be met by police, who were there to prevent any further unexpected incidents. The Taipei Supreme Court swiftly sentenced Chen Yonghui to death on March 4, 2023, with his execution carried out just 1 week later. At 5 a.m. on March 11th, his life came to a grim end at the execution grounds. Yet one haunting question lingered in the minds of many. What had happened to the missing heart and liver? Initially, all media outlets reported only that the victim was missing these vital organs. It wasn't until a year later that the press unveiled a shocking detail. The police had returned to the crime scene, retrieving an inner pot from a rice cooker. As for the pot's contents, official media never disclosed what they had found. Chen Yonghui had been singularly focused on his quest for success, driven by an insatiable desire for wealth. On the surface, his ambition appeared to mirror the aspirations of many hardworking individuals, which is not inherently wrong. However, in the relentless pursuit of money and success, one can unwittingly fall into the trap of deep-seated greed. When ambition morphs into blind obsession, the original purpose of striving can be easily forgotten. Whether the goal was to better care for family, fulfill a life's purpose, or merely seek fleeting glory and vanity, the essence of that journey can become obscured. It is my hope that as everyone pursues their careers, they will remember to cherish what truly gives life meaning, the people who stand beside us, offering support and love. This way, our life's journey won't be merely filled with the coldness of money, but will instead be rich with love and companionship. This concludes today's case. What are your thoughts on this chilling story? Feel free to share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss other gripping cases. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video. As the case unfolded, viewers were urged to share and subscribe, ensuring they would not miss the gripping details of other intense cases. With a promise of more revelations to come, the narrative continued to captivate.